Good viewer, you are watching Xirtus. This is because Xirtus makes you feel good, makes you feel fulfilled. You are enjoying this. You will continue to watch Xirtus for a long time to come. You want to subscribe to Xirtus, and you will. You will like and subscribe and share. You will tell your friends. Tell your friends about Xirtus. Your friends will come to like Xirtus, much as you are liking this right now, as we speak. Thank you for subscribing to Xirtus. See, that was easy.
The following video contains content some viewers might find disturbing. The views and opinions expressed here are not facts and are nothing more than entertainment. The views and opinions are not facts and do not represent the views and opinions of Xirtus or our channel, and do not necessarily represent or reflect the views of the guests, YouTube, Google, mainstream media, society, or civilization at large, or anybody. Viewer discretion is advised.
Oh yeah. Oh, amazing.
I could hear Andrew's car, but I think he's muted it. That's bass. How's it going, Andrew? How's that ride?
Good. I apologize for that. I don't have my headphones in, and I'm almost home.
That's still pretty base. It adds to the reality of reality. I mean, American Time Machine is glitching in time right now. I've never seen anything like this before. It's actually kind of based.
It looks like a filter, like you put on like the VHS tape filter.
Dude, 1989, 1987.
Wicked.
1987 to 1993 is blurry, and time travelers should be more responsible. I think that's the fact. So, full disclosure, I don't have Grok yet, and I'm kind of salty about it. I get salty about the saltiest, the simplest things. But get me Grok as soon as possible. Basically, what is Grok? Let's talk about Grok. What have you noticed about this cool unhinged AI model from Elon Musk?
Well, it's I mean, I haven't had access to it either, but there's a strong implication just to the name of it, Grok, which is, and you know, if you're buying like a product, like an important product for someone, and they give it like a name that has like a real exact philosophy attached to it, like that would strongly influence whether that's the brand for you or not. Like if there was like a cola called like Peto Cola or something, you probably wouldn't drink that one, you know. You get like based cola or something like that. So Grok is like one of the most based concepts possible from a John Heinlein novel. I think.
So why are they saying it's about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? What's the deal with that? Because obviously it's Heinlein. There's no way it's not, right? Like,
oh well, just the word Grok is definitely from Stranger in a Strange Land, and
yeah.
I totally want to get into what it is. But the AI itself might be modeled after the AI from Hitchhiker. So if you've read the Hitchhiker series, it's like an AI that has like a sense of humor and like understands like irony and like.
Oh, but his name isn't Grok, right? Or is it? Did they do that? Is his name Grok in Hitchhikers? No. Okay, so the name is specifically from Heinlein. Yeah, so the name is specifically.
Is it? Maybe it is. But I read Hitchhiker's Guide like decades before I read Stranger in a Strange Land, so I could have been reading the whole Hitchhiker series and not realize there was any importance to the name of the AI. But I don't think the AI had a name. I think it was just like supercomputer. That's the AI that they asked what's the meaning to life and everything, and decades later or whatever, it comes back with 42 is the answer. But I don't know if that AI actually has a name or not.
So that's the other thing. Is he basing it on the AI from the book? I mean, granted, the movie character isn't that different. It's kind of a depressed AI. So he's trying to give Grok this depressed show before we even get into like Heinlein, I guess, superficially.
Right, yeah. Man, I wish I was more brushed up on my Douglas Adams. I haven't read these books in forever and ever.
He's a super depressed robot. He's like, I could tell you the odds, but you wouldn't like it.
So that's different than the supercomputer they build in one of the later Hitchhiker books. Then. Okay, so that's just like the ship's AI or something. That's like that's on. Yeah, is that what's represented on all the artwork on the covers, like the flying? Like, man, this has been so long since I read these, but I was more of a Dirk Gently guy. But I did read that whole series and loved it. I was just too young to really understand the philosophical undertones of
over the years. The character changed a bunch. I mean, like, but even from the beginning, Douglas is it like Scott Adams? Douglas Adams
Douglas Adams is the Hitchhiker series.
Yeah, Douglas Adams. Gently. His idea of a depressed robot that doesn't, it feels emotions, but it's feeling like the worst ones essentially, and it's not really stoked on its existence. But it's starting to feel emotions, right? And pain and suffering being the first emotions that it feels, which is kind of
it's like a Seinfeld character, right? It's kind of got like a self-deprecating like New York Jew vibe to it.
Yeah, it's very sardonic. I would give you that, and very pessimistic and everything because it knows so much. And so with all that knowledge comes suffering, I think.
Well, it's kind of like the wise eunuch, you know, like you know everything, but then at the end of the day, you don't have a wiener, so it's no fun still.
But you're right. There's also the AI in Hitchhiker's Guide that's trying to simulate universes, right? And so he might be going like full far out. The idea is not just about this depressed thing, but this thing that actually emulates simulations. And Elon Musk, of course, has said he's a simulation theorist.
I'm going to look at the chat. Maybe people in the chat remember more about the AI companion.
Good tip on that, because I know there was a super chat. Let me just say thank you very much to Stoic Fitness 22 for holy. That's based every day we saint posting. I like that. Yeah, check in the chat. I mean, what do you think?
So I didn't even know that Elon Musk's AI is inspired by the Hitchhiker's AI, but the word Grok is like really positive that he chose that, because Grok basically, if you read Stranger in a Strange Land, it's about here's like the synchronicity is it's about the first expedition to Mars gets lost. They never hear back from it. The first human sent to colonize Mars. So then like how 20 something years later, they send another expedition to Mars, and they find that one child who was a baby on the first expedition had survived and was raised by Martians. So he has a total Martian conception of reality, which is basically just code word for mystery school master. It's basically, he's like a Hermetic master. He is just raised that way by like Martian ghosts society. Like their society is ruled by like the dead. Like they still contact with the dead, and the dead are like the elders of Martian society. So basically it's like Hermetic master philosophy that this human raised on Mars has. Then they bring him back to Earth, and he's basically like Jesus Christ because his philosophy is so advanced and he's so full of love that people can't deal with him. But he brings with him the term Grok from the Martian language, which is like a 4-dimensional language, basically. You know, it's like a visual language, like every old language besides English. And so people just can't deal with him. Basically, he's too advanced. But the word grok means to drink, and it also means to understand, but like to become one with, and like you have to like want the understanding of it. So like you can know something, but you don't necessarily grok it. Like to grok something is to like totally like integrate it with yourself. So like you actually like accept it and understand how it's like necessary in the big picture. So we know a lot of stuff, but we don't really grok anything because we don't know if we're in a simulation or if we're in a a bubble universe or like all these different options. We don't even know where we're at. So we can know a thing, like I can know a glass of water, but if I don't know if I'm in a simulation or not, how much do I actually know about the glass of water? So I don't grok anything. I just know a bunch of stuff. But if you actually understand what life is and its inherent laws and rules, like a Hermetic master does, or if you were raised by a society of Hermetic masters, then you would intuitively grok things like that. Not only know the glass of water, but understand what water is and how you're made of water and what everything is made of and what it is and whether it's good or bad, and really important stuff that we don't have access to. So it's just encouraging that he's using the word grok because it's attached to an understanding of Hermetic principles and mystery school teachings.
It reminded me of a couple things. First, like I think of Grok from The Mask of Zorro because there's that scene with the general who's this like blonde general, and he's like consuming human body parts of chiefs and warriors that he's killed, and he's like they eat the eagle's eye so they can see more, right? And he's trying to show how you consume the hand of the person who cut this. It was like this great swordsman, but that's also very similar to, David Icke's friend, like the Zulu chief who had to eat the hand, right, in order to be initiated into his mystery school in Africa. So this idea of like consumption or something, of being part of nature, that you have to be like in the middle of the process.
So I guess there's like a more utopian conception of like being initiated into a mystery school isn't so dramatic if your entire society has like a Hermetic philosophy like that, and is operating on this like spiritual, like transcendental level that, we're very material. We govern ourselves by very material rules that only acknowledge material existence and, don't acknowledge soul or spirituality or karma or any kind of cycles or basically like nature or anything, just like just laws that are just esoteric, basically, are the laws we live under. Oh, you're muted.
I feel like we've lost a lot of perspective. I mean, we've become very presentist about this. People have families now, but we have to imagine what it was like. I hear something crazy. What is that? Andrew.
My wallet. Sorry.
Shame on you. So like, I feel like, just push to talk and unmute or something. Yeah. But I feel like we expect a lot from when we look at the past. We're like, this group of people, they must have been suffering, or how could they do this thing? We don't really understand like the natural processes, right? So when you become the thing, like it's a major part of contemplation. You imagine contemplating the situation where you're the character, but you're also all the other characters in the story. And you try to really become all the parts, because you can be spending half your life like, how could they do this? How could people ever be? How could they? Because it's I and thou. How could thou be so different than I? And then you have to spend your time eventually becoming it. Like, right. If you don't immediately contemplate it, then you realize it. Then you spend the rest of your life actually becoming the things that you hate. So it's better. I mean, it keeps coming back to like integration. I feel like.
Right. Yeah. It's actually funny that you say, you know, thou and you. In Stranger in a Strange Land, the main character, the boy who was raised on Mars, his name is Valentine Michael Smith, and he actually says all the time, "Thou art God," and they form like a new world religion in the book called like the Church of All Worlds, and basically. You know, like people keep talking about God and appealing to God, and he's like, "Thou art God." He's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Why are you using the wrong syntax?" It's like, "It's you. You're talking about yourself. If you, why don't you do the good things that you're talking about?" And he has such like a deep understanding of how things actually function, and he was just raised that way. Like that's the normal way to be raised. So to him, it's not even special. He can make bad things just disappear. He's like, "That was wrong." They're like, "What did you do to it?" He's like, I got rid of it. It was wrong." There's like, he's like, "Why do you just keep the wrong things around?" And like, but he can still learn too. Like he doesn't want to walk on grass. He's like, the grass is alive. He's like, "I'm not going to step on it." And they're like, "No, take off your shoes and walk on the grass. It's nice." And he's like, "No, it's alive. That's not how it works." But he doesn't grok it, you know? So then he tries it and he's like, "Oh, the grass actually likes this. This is actually like a good relationship I never experienced. There's no grass on Mars." And he's like, now I fully grok, you know, more about like, you know, just like relationships like that. Like, how can people do that? Like, how can you just step on the grass, you know?
The omnivore's dilemma, right? Like the idea that, you know, the bee feels like it's exploiting the flower, and then the flower feels like it's exploiting all the bees.
Right. And we look at their society and we're like, "Oh, it's slavery. They have like a queen. It's a feudal system with like one queen, one monarch, and like everyone's a serf and just labors their whole life. You know, they get sick of honey and all this stuff, you know?"
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting also. I mean, like there was a video, so it's been on my mind, and I think give a little credit to Mind Unveiled, right? Because I don't know if he's like specifically reaching out with his titles or something, because he made like a DuckTales, Darkwing Duck, and Twin Peaks title, you know, for the like the more recent thing they were looking through, Darkwing Duck and everything. But they did a thing on Little Rascals, and I thought that was really interesting because they kind of point out that some of the Little Rascals are orphans, although I don't think all of them are. I still think it's an interesting point that you have a gangster kind of story about these kids, right? And these kids are trained in this era where there's Freemasonry and there's like occult symbolism all around them. But it's presented in this way where it seems like because we're so removed from it now, we don't really understand the way symbolism was part of their culture, right? Like, because if you were living in the ruins of a reset and you have to join a club in order to read a book, right? Then these are the ways that you move forward in your society. And so the only people who know what's going on are people that are members of the club because they know all the symbols, and
Right.
everyone else
Yeah.
is looking at it like it's just magic or something.
Right. And our whole society should be a mystery school. So there shouldn't be this is something I was trying to say before and derailed myself. There shouldn't be a painful initiation process. You know what I mean? You should be gradually just raised into, this is your understanding. Like we're raised into, look both ways before you cross the street. Red means stop, green means go. Like learn these basic concepts. Like there's other basic concepts you could be learning, you know? And if you were to structure education for young children now, you would probably not like, you know, have the same classes with the same names. You know, there'd probably be a lot more stretching and like meditation and stuff nowadays, you know, and like, so there's no need for this painful initiation where you have to tear away your worldly misunderstandings, because those worldly misunderstandings were already, you know, a system implanted into you unnecessarily, you know, so.
But go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, I was just about to chime in because my 9-year-old, she goes to a Waldorf school, and
I'm
you know
familiar.
yeah. So you know that, you know, up through like 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, they're like fairies and magic and very like a holistic approach. They don't teach them how to, you know, do like reading and stuff until like 3rd grade, and my fiance, the mother of my 9-month-old, she was looking into it because she started working at the daycare that's attached to it, and Rudolf Steiner owned like a factory, and he, you know, wanted a place for all the factory workers to be able to send their kids while they're working. So it gave me a different perspective on like, oh, you know, they're not really pushing these kids to like learn these concepts until their brains are developed enough, but it's also kind of like that system of control where they're limiting their education to sort of like limit their options in a way, and sort of like selling them on you know, the fairy magic BS.
It depends. In defense of Waldorf, you know, because I have a lot of friends who went to Waldorf, and I think they came out rather brilliant. But you know, I have
Yeah.
friends who wore like dresses to school, not that they were trans. They just were like Waldorf kids. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they could do whatever, and so they did, and they didn't understand what it was they were doing. And then eventually they're like, oh, well, this is socially, I shouldn't do this in an outside of Waldorf environment, and things change. But they still are very creative people. I think
Yes.
maybe imprinting on a child at that age what to think isn't the way to go. Maybe, well, I mean, in a certain sense, I understand Waldorf's approach that you should be teaching kids how to reason before you should teach them these are the facts.
Yeah.
Maybe
Right,
So
yeah.
because
just
they don't.
regurgitate. Yeah.
Well,
They
facts
should
are like
be,
because.
yeah.
Go ahead.
They should be learning reasoning through osmosis, like that. But we codify. They learn codification through osmosis. Like just everything. Everyone gets in a line. All these doors are open. These ones closed. This color means that. This color means that. There's no meaning or thinking going on with any of it. It's just like learn these rules. Learn the rules. And even before you expose them to language or try to tell them what to do, little children, they're just looking around, observing with their senses everything.
Right.
And they pick up the vibe and they're like, oh, this place is
To
whack. Like
pick
by the
up the
time I was
vibe.
5 years old, I was like, this place is whack. I was like, this sucks, bro. Like, what are my options? This is trash. You know,
Right.
have to,
I think that's a
it used to be
major.
totally different.
That's a major thing on truth, you know, because truth is not something that, I mean, either it doesn't exist, or if it does, we can only have reflections of it and meta tags, ideas about what it is. We have this idea of the knowable truth that's different than the eternal truth. Like, if there is an eternal truth, which I'm for, it's probably not something that can be discussed perpetually with the same language, with the same reasoning, with the same ideas to new people all the time. It has to be explained and reasoned in different ways, and probably each person has to come to that reason. I think it's dangerous to try to force everyone to reason the same way. That's kind of where we're
Yeah.
at in society.
I mean, yes and
Yeah.
no. It depends, like nature versus nurture, you know. But like ants learn to walk in lines the same way children learn to walk in lines, by just observing through osmosis. Everyone's just going in lines. Like we can call it instincts, but like if you were to, I guarantee you, if you were to raise children in like a you know, like a kibbutz or a commune with your own schools and rules and farms and stuff like that, and just structure your own way of life, and no one walked in lines one behind the next, everybody looked like and just walked in a natural path, kind of like water going around rocks, and children were born exposed to that. I don't believe it's like instinct, you know. And we are a species that has the ability to control our to steer our own evolution, you know. So it's, I don't know that we're like ants where we're locked into these systems like bees and ants are. We, you know, it seems like we could restructure society entirely, and that's sort of what the point of having philosophy is, you know. But we kind of supplanted natural law and philosophy and cooperation with nature with just sort of like codification. We have these like codified systems that are just written in stone and don't really connect to nature in any way, and that's all children are exposed to. So I think we could change it.
I mean, they
Man.
teach kids from an early age, like curiosity killed the cat, but curiosity, asking questions, I think isn't like that the foundation of Buddhism. It's like the
Right.
real
And
beauty
also, is
is
the
in the
cat the
asking.
individual or the human society? Because you can save every single individual and we can all just be in padded rooms, unable to hurt ourselves, you know? So it's like people, there is risks, and people do stick their tongue to a, you know, a frozen lamppost and regret it, or mess around and get struck by lightning out and, you know, holding a, you know, flying a kite in a thunderstorm or whatever. But also that's the way you make great discoveries and progress.
Mm.
So
Um,
people, sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering if you all had seen um, this teacher reported after they staged a science experiment for their class. They basically gave them the wrong seed, or they mislabeled the seed intentionally because they wanted the class to report on the changes being different than what they were expecting. I think they told them it was a regular potato, but really it was a yam that they were growing. But every single student changed their report based on what they thought the expectation was going to be. So, like, so they all said that their potato was growing normally and fucking lied because
Right.
the teacher knew that it was going to be sweet potatoes, and the teacher couldn't fail the whole class, because if a teacher fails the whole class, then it's like it's the teacher's fault essentially. And how I think this was like in like a junior or senior year of high school. So like those people who were doing that were sort of like on track to enter the sciences or like health sciences, like in college and whatnot. And it's like those are the people who become doctors, the people who sort of like twist their observations to match the expectation, as opposed to just like, oh wow, this is not what I was expecting.
Right. There's a reason people go to the Hermitage to expand their wisdom. You know, you go to where there's a ton of people to expand your knowledge, but you go to solitude to expand your wisdom. So there's definitely a time and a place to isolate and just think and just observe anything but, you know, codified behavior, just natural environments, natural behavior, and just be by yourself and think, you know. So there is, you know, it is contagious, you know, group think, mob think, and the way we have to organize. The more crowded it gets, society changes, you know. When it becomes super crowded, it starts breaking down.
But I mean, doesn't society sort of like expect us to produce certain results or whatever, and that's people kind of like fall
But
into
those
that
change, right? So that's like, I've been thinking a lot about how you have the tribe of Judah, give this idea of the Lion of Judah, which has to do with like the constellation of the lion. And there's like a way things work at that time, you know, and people get used to it. But things shift, and then you get into the Cancer, the period of Cancer from like 1850 BC on to like now, right? And even that, now we're at a point of transition. So when you're in these moments of milieu where things are starting to become other things, then you don't have the same reliability. It's like being on a cusp. So it's sure, you're relying on some people are like, and there's a genetic disposition, of course, to rely on what's worked in the past, but there's also a huge search constantly for what's the next thing to come. What's the thing that will protect me from the future changes? What's the thing that's changed stronger than the future changes? And I think that's always playing in, and it depends on how bad it gets. But if there's ever a major disaster, then that immediately becomes the new normative, right? Because the thing that was stable, if it can't function anymore, and usually by the time it can't function, it's dilapidated, right? It's what's a remnant of what the system was. So it naturally falls away, and we end up in a new system. And the idea of naivete is useful too. I mean, imagining kids that don't know anything, that are taught these, like, so the reason they're teaching you instead of the words, right? Like you're going through the ritual because you're enacting the actual process that others have gone through. It's the consequentialism. You're saying, well, the people that went through life, you know, did this, and you're doing it from a really meticulous math formula, because it's almost like you're racing 5 different Hummers, but one of them is a different color, and that color has a slight effect on the speed of the car. And you know this because the variable has intricate effects. So you're saying, okay, I'm going to take a person and that I'm going to make them go through wearing this outfit because they wore that outfit, and I'm going to have them walk in this room, and they're all going to do it. Eventually, the consequences will hopefully be something similar. That's the whole point of the mystery schools. That's why what's it like Stephen Lewis from the Amorc, what's his name? Something, I'm sorry. Amorc Stephen Lewis. Is that right?
I have no
Harvey
idea.
Spencer. Harvey Spencer Lewis was one of the Rosicrucian occultists who founded the first. He was the founder in the U.S. and the first imperator of the ancient mystical order of the Rosicrucian Amorc, right? And what he did was he really like assembled a lot of the mysteries. Like he'd gone around and he'd been busting false clairvoyance, because that was a huge thing at the turn of the 19th century, the end of the 19th century or the turn of the 20th century. But then he'd acquired so much of the actual mysteries. He's like, these are the actual mysteries, right? And at the time, the interest in yoga was that, hey, if yoga is doing things for your body, then probably the rest of the Hermetic studies, maybe if I eat these kinds of foods, who knew that if I didn't eat certain kinds of foods, it would affect me in these subtle ways, right? So a lot of that is actually, you know, the beginnings of where science really comes out of this, where we're saying, okay, this is our diets, this is our metabolism, this is our gastronomy, this is our exercise routines. All these things that emerged in the 1920s and 30s on, you know, they're trying to explain like these mystery paths in not the things themselves, but you can see the benefit societies as well. Beyond masonry, you've got like the Lions Club. I know that, again, I was thinking about the Lions Club because Hal Roach, who made our gang, the Little Rascals, he was a Freemason from the Arctic Lodge number 7 in Alaska in Juneau, I think of 1902. But then he'd become a Lion Club because he'd been in the Sigma Corps, right? And so the Sigma Corps in the Army would make propaganda. They'd also do messages, like they'd communications, but also they'd run propaganda. And so he'd been involved with RAM, which is a company that was supposed to be Roche and Mussolini, and he was going to make fascist films for the Mussolini government, but then was roped into working for the United States government in the Signal Corps. So it's interesting to me because you look at the Lions Club as this benevolent society that's helping people out. Like that's the primary function that they say that they exist for, which seems like they're an atonement group, right? They're trying to help these kids out because of what they think they're doing in the world at large, right?
Wow, you said a million different things.
Had a thought.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some good stuff in there. One of them, well, I think you were kind of talking about we go through these different epochs, and there's like different understandings in each ones, and in some of them in the past, it seemed like they were smarter in certain ways and losing old technologies and then kind of rediscovering them through like a different lens. Like, and a great example is curry. Like people in large swaths of the world just eat curry every day. Now, 10 years ago, everyone, you need to take turmeric as for aging, for inflammation, just helps with everything, turmeric. But you want to take a little black pepper with that, it helps it absorb better. As soon as you hear that, it's like what you want to get then too is coriander, cinnamon, clove, fenugreek. How do I know? Because that's what goes in curry. You guys are just making curry. You're scientists spending $1 billion to invent curry. And also the way they eat this is a little bit every day with food because it's all fat soluble. So if you just take it on an empty stomach, it won't even work. And so we're like mega dosing just curcumin extract and stuff like that. It's not even necessary. Like this is the actual correct way to do it. And they're trying to reverse engineering, like aliens trying to understand like how you make soda or something totally basic, and just approaching it from like a way too highbrow approach. But like I think it's totally true. And we go through these different epochs, and humans are needed to do different things. So like I think just that's probably just a side effect that we had that kind of knowledge about what kind of foods to eat was probably just a side effect of what humans were building or doing in that epoch. And then a new epoch starts, like the industrial age, and humans have to become they have to speak different, think different. They have to adjust to their new role. Now they're not doing what they used to do. They're not agricultural anymore. Now they're industrial. And now we're going from industrial to informational. So it requires new language, new philosophies, and a whole new lens on how you look at life. And it seems like humans are doing this long-term cyclical project to build something one stage at a time. And there's a lot of consequences to that seem like they're like the focus, like what's happening to humans on the end of that. Like right now, why are so many people addicted to pharmaceuticals or stuff? It's because people are researching chemistry and building wealth around chemistry. They're catalyzing something. They're doing something from the next stage of humanity. It's having negative side effects. So if we had a more holistic understanding of what we were and what was actually going on in these symbols and cycles and how all this stuff is real, then maybe we could have a less bumpy ride and like insulate ourselves from making like mistakes. Cause like obviously it's still in India today. Let's be honest. Like they're they don't have the same level of technology as like other just neighbors in Asia and stuff like that, like technological development and like engineering prowess and stuff like that. But they're eating the right things. They're doing the right things. So humanity is able to do things that we weren't able to do at the time, where we were all able to eat more healthy and not have so many obese people and autistic people and stuff like that. Like that is like a side effect of like, look at like the amazing technology. We're already moving past silicon and microchips and going into quantum computing and, just information just traveling around on the ether and stuff like that. So we're losing a lot, we're gaining a lot, and we're probably like focusing too much on like the side effects, because that's what really affects like our little individual existence along the way.
I think it's amazing. I mean, you think about alchemists, right? So you've got these people that were, and I've been talking to a lot of people that are like, I'm sober. And I'm like, no, you're not. Don't you like drink tea every day? Like, aren't you like addicted to caffeine? And I don't mean that like to be pious, but it's just, you're a drug addict. Most people that think they're sober are in equilibrium. You know, I
Yeah.
give them that. But all the food you eat has biometabolized drug just means dried herb, right? So a lot of the foods you have, every food you have has, I mean, it has a function in your system. And to say that you're, you know, at some sort of when you're just living off just water or something like that, I mean, maybe, but that seems crazy. Like you would die. So I don't know. I think that you always are going to have some effects from sucrose, fructose, from the things you eat. And yeah, it's better to look at it like that you're taking drugs through your food, that you're eating your medicine through your food. If you're eating maca, if you're eating, like you said, curry mixtures and things like that, coriander is really good for you. But yeah, we've moved to this idea of reactionary materialism, and it's an illusion. Like you said, most people don't know what's going on. So it's a new, like, it's just alchemists into scientists. It's just esoteric schools of wizardry. And
Right.
it's right. It's the same thing, really.
You know,
I
it's
mean,
people have this misconception of alchemy that it's like always pouring one liquid into another. So it's like interesting that that's what that picture was. It's like you look up alchemy and all you think of is dudes. Dudes just have vials and they're pouring liquids. Alchemy means a complete grokking of physics to the point there where you can interact with it simply and just make things the way you want them to be. So actually, Valentine Michael Smith in Stranger in a Strange Land, he has the ability to do anything, like way beyond the Force. He can just make people not exist anymore, just anything he wants to do. And he's approaching it from the simple way, the same way, you know, making a curry just because it tastes good is the simple way. Scientifically, you know, breaking down curcumin into super curcumin and directly injecting it into your, you know, joints or whatever is like a very complicated way of approaching the same problem. So like to turn lead to gold, the simple way to do it is to just do it. The more complicated way is to endlessly pour liquids into each other and develop, you know, thousands of years of scientific and technological practices and eventually be able to, you know, make some super machine that does it. But like there's always a simpler way is the implication of the mystery teachings. You know, at the end of the day, what you really need to do is nothing anyhow. So it's like pretty simple, you know, like everything's going to go. Like you don't really need to do anything. You know, you're all verklempt about your meaning in life and your purpose, but it's like the greater being, you know, consciousness, humanity is like doing wild things that you can't even predict. And it all works. You know what I mean? Like whatever technology of the ages, whether it's the pyramids all the way through the Matrix, you know what I mean? It all works. The proof is in the pudding, you know? So it's like, you don't really need to do much. And that's why the ascended masters just go sit on a mountaintop and laugh or whatever. And people are like, what should I do? What's the meaning? They're just like laughing at them because that kind of is the answer. Like it's taking care of itself, you know, regardless of how you feel about it or what's happening.
That kind of reminds me of that period of time when it seemed like whoever from wherever or whenever are operating these UAPs were heavy into studying cows. Like, because I know Bob Lazar and a few other people have reported that the reason why they're obsessed with people is because we have souls, and whether they harvest them or whatever, it's like that's something that they don't have. I think it's like the Greys. And from cows, there is an interface for that spiritual realm. So I'm like, why were they like abducting cows so they could like reverse engineer like their shit and like try to hack into the mushroom matrix or something? Or like, do they even have the hardware to access that? Like, can they trip?
How do they
And
have
how would
motivations to do anything if they don't have that?
their motivations could be purely material. I mean, who knows? Like,
Because it sounds like they're
what
envious of us. Like we have something they don't. That's like a philosophical concept and like an emotion. It
well,
seems
I
like.
also think that there's like kind of a like LSD versus psilocybin. Like LSD, it
Totally.
seems like a more digital thing.
Yeah.
And maybe they might have access to that sort of
Oh.
realm. I don't know. I can't even begin
Oh,
to.
imagine that. Imagine there's like a carbon DMT realm and then a silicon DMT. Like you don't even go to the same one.
Yeah.
there are, I mean, in the
Different frequencies.
the Narakas, right? So like the idea that we're even existing in multiple material levels of like some material is suffering. We just experience it. Some people find suffering excruciatingly pleasurable. And so eventually we're supposed to move beyond that completely. But yeah, I mean, everyone could be. So the idea that the grays have no souls, I like the idea that if you're an advanced species, civilization, something like that, you're likely to have use of bodies like vehicles, right? Because you're a light being. If you're able to save your data, so the idea that you could switch bodies at any point, then grays would be like manufactured bodies, and so they would be installed with the soul, or unless they're just literally like, machines like created with destinies, like to run purposes out, which I can imagine also, like you could create an animal that has instincts, right? Like that can be done. You can install instincts. We know how that works in insects, right? So we could also have trigger reactions to pheromones, right? So there's a lot of things you could do to create a species that just had destinial, like it has to do something. But it makes more sense to me that like it lacks emotion and feeling, right? Because it's just a tool, and then we have whatever it is, like more emotion and feeling, and to be able to use our body or to understand our body more. I mean, like there's something about our experiences that we're able to enjoy suffering. Really, we find joy in this world is probably pretty unusual, I think, for some, like the way we go about it, that we can find bliss, because a lot of things are just living in suffering.
Well, there's a lot of assumptions baked into that for sure. One of them is that humans are the most emotionally complex form of consciousness. You know what I mean? And like we only envision less. Like Vulcans, Borg, Terminators. Like everything is like less emotionally complex than us. Imagine
orcas, though, right?
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, and also our behavior, or like our suffering or whatever, probably looks totally different at different scales. Just like I always bring up ants and bees, just because it seems like such a, you have no options. You're locked in. You know what I mean? But if you're looking at humans from like a higher vantage point, it might look the exact same way. The way we're doing industrialism and building all this stuff, it's like none of it's for our body. Like if our organism is married to this body, if they're, like that's like the Christian conception, is like your body is holy, your spirit is holy, like all of it is together, is the whole package, then in that case, all of the things that we do don't serve our body at all, because we've developed to this point where we have our greatest understanding of, how to manipulate reality, and everything we do is to are the detriment of our physical health. So from a higher vantage point looking at us, it would be like, difficult to understand, but it wouldn't be something you'd really be craving. And the idea that grays are developed technologically by, like, let's say future humans or something like that, or they are future humans or whatever, like they'd go through all this development to, and I assume some understanding with it, to mute their emotions. And then somehow at the end of that, they become envious of emotions again, like the envy just creeps back in. I mean, I guess it's totally possible. It's just like it's a very specific vision.
I mean, I don't disagree with a few of those things. So one of them being that I don't think we're the most emotionally intelligent species. Obviously, I think that whales, particularly orcas, are, definitive evidence of higher emotional capacity for understanding. And they have they have a more enlarged part of their brain for the section that produces emotions, and they also have bigger family pods, right? They have maternal instincts that go multiple generations, so they keep their pods together in these ways, and they have sounds for names for different level, like the way we'd think of aunt or cousin or something like that. They have far more specific words for different relationships between different matriarchal pods that are connected. So they're very close knit, and they're highly social, and they have a higher empathy for each other. They're also psychopaths, right? Like orcas murder and like play with their prey, for fun until they're exhausted and kill them. Whales can have emotional intensity. We've seen, like, if you've seen the Blackfish documentary, when they're sick of playing, they pull you down to the bottom of the pool because they're like tired of you pulling them down to the bottom of the pool. So they're highly aware. But I think also that's a danger, right? Like if we're in proximity to each other, having heightened socioemotions leads to violence. And I think this is kind of a thing that people have associated in socioeconomics. They're like, oh, these groups of people are higher crime rates, but they're also from romance countries. You know what I mean? It's not just It's not just that they're like one race or another, because like a lot of people come from romance, quote unquote, countries, which have been converted to believing in passion, violence, dueling, these things. That's permeated all over the world, right? Like that's
I think emotion leads to expression, and sometimes that expression can be violence. That's like a misused or just aimless expression of emotion, but it could also be art. And then art inspires fiction, and fiction is always the predecessor to engineering. So in a way, our technological advancement is tied to our emotions, because everything is predicted in fiction before it becomes. That's where the idea comes from. The idea is art, you know what I mean? Stemming from emotion. And then you can get a very rational, logic, STEM oriented person to engineer it and bring it to reality. And then you look at that person, you look at Elon Musk, but are you looking at Robert Heinlein, who inspired him? And that's why it's called Grok. So you got to look at him too. He's a creator of Grok too. His emotions that created the art that inspired Elon Musk to make the thing, they did it together. The two of them is how it really seems to work. So I'm just thinking now for the first time that it might be impossible to have a super technically advanced Borg species that has no emotions, because who's creating the fiction, unless they have an AI that can just tell you what would have been in the fiction if you had made the art or something like that. But that's a big assumption.
No, that's interesting too. Okay, a couple of things, but we should get back onto Heinlein in a second. But just the thought of emotions being a ritual as well, because we think of priorities that we make based on emotional responses as being emotional, but they're not necessarily. We just have the physical impulsive hormone that happens that tells you, don't even think about it. You know what to do. Run this routine. Just start freaking out. Stop digesting and run. Things like that happen. And because that's the way we program, we logic and reason things out. If we're programming that into a machine system, then it's repeating that. It's the consequentialism. If you're repeating that like style, that life practice, then that practice will have the same functions regardless of intention. Maybe.
Function and intention, that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because like it's Bluetooth versus like naturally cultivated psychic ability. It's like I forget which scientist it is, but he like received a like psychic image message from the orcas to like arrive at a dock at a certain day, and he went there and they showed up, and like that was the result of some sort of, I guess, maybe emotionally rooted connection. That would be a little bit different than maybe say like an alien, like sending him what essentially would be like a binary signal, or the CIA or whoever, to do the same thing, or to, it's like sending messages through the air. It's like it could be accomplished like a number of different ways, but like I think where it comes from and how it's cultivated kind of gives more value to it. I don't know. I think that there's different intentions with like something that comes from the heart versus not.
Yeah, it definitely seems. Oh, you're muted, bro. Andreas, you're muted.
Doesn't really matter. Check out these dolphins getting initiated into some secret society. Keep going.
Wicked. Dude, one of them's he's got a darker belly than the rest.
He's like a silverback.
Back then it was totally cool. That's the thing. Keep going.
I forget what I was gonna say, quite frankly. But you said something about propaganda before that I actually wanted to jump on, because that I was just to brush up for this. I reread Heinlein's Wikipedia, and there's an interesting part in there where literary critics of the time were tying him or putting him in the same mouthful with Ayn Rand and George Orwell, and he took exception to that because he said their art borders on propaganda because it comes with a suggestion. It tells people a solution. He's like, all I ever do is ask questions. He's like, that's my job as like a science fiction. And he's actually the inventor of hard science fiction. He's like, I'm trying to make, science fiction that will be predictive of the future, not just prescriptive of my own ideology.
Yeah, so why is it then that Elon is so reticent to mention that it's Heinlein? Like he's even going as far as to distract us with Douglas Adams and pull us away, like to say, I mean, it's Heinlein, but I'm being sarcastic. I guess is what he's trying to say. I'm a playful Heinlein, but what does that mean then? What does that leave Heinlein as? I mean, because obviously Heinlein's a major influence.
It's really specifically about the Jesus Christ archetype character from Stranger in a Strange Land, that the boy raised on Mars, who eventually they martyr him. They just blow him to pieces. He's giving them the philosophy of love, and they're literally like blowing his limbs off with shotguns and stuff. That's what happens. Spoilers at the end, but you should still read it though. It's a great read. Yeah. And I mean, but he doesn't fully die because he's like, Grok's existence and everything. Anyways, but yeah. So it's just an interesting idea. Predictive, programming versus prescriptive programming. Like, there's if you're summoning it, or if you're just or if it seems intuitive to you that it's going to be true. But where's the great science fiction writers of today? Really, unfortunately, it makes it really hard to predict what's coming next, because most of the stuff that I grew up reading is coming true in my lifetime. Most of like Bradbury, Asimov, Minority Report, 1984, Fahrenheit 451, like every single dystopian thing, and no jetpacks. You know what I mean? Like none of the good, no flying cars, none of the good stuff. You don't get the medical thing that just fixes all your injuries, like from Star Trek or anything like that. So
I still love David Brin. I mean, he made time to do a doc interview, right? So he's cool. He did The Postman, and he's writing all kinds of stuff. And what he's doing now, speaking of our gang, right, Little Rascals, he going around to high schools, elementary schools, and helping build up the ideas of kids with their stories, right? So kids that have their own ideas, he's helping them flush out their stories and write them, which is pretty cool. And you can read those as well. So, I mean, there are people that are trying to push for that, but like part of the interview I did with Brin was about the problems of dystopia. And his defense was that how many things probably, in his opinion, right, have been just halted from ending the world or something, maybe that's a Hollywood explanation of what would happen. But, how many horrible disasters didn't happen because of a movie that scared the populace into voting for, or for, preparing for in some way something. And I think that's interesting, because that is the general consensus of any propagandist, right? Is that you should make information available to people that they can receive, and you can't always expect them to understand everything.
Right.
So trying to get them to, latch onto the archetype.
A great way to transmit archetypes is through art. You know what I mean? Which is why it's such a shame right now. I guess what I was trying to say is we have futurists. We hear so much from futurists, but futurists are not artists. You know what I mean? So it's like if they could express with their vision in a passable piece of art, then maybe I could understand, or if Bill Gates could do something like that, maybe I could understand it, put it in the form of a song or a novel or something, and try to communicate to me what your vision is, brother. It doesn't seem good,
I feel like that's what's happening so fast, right? Like AI is,
and also serious people should put fiction. Fiction is super important. People need to go read the great classics. These are like philosophical, technological advancements, like advancements in human thought, like unlocking like new powers to the brain. People need to go read the great novels, go through them, everything in the English language, read the Russian stuff, the French stuff, go back and read Greek stuff. People read a lot of like just nonfiction, and that's great. And people read a lot of articles and know a lot of current stuff, and that's great. But you've got to marry the two together with the art, because that's part of like grokking versus just knowing a thing. Grokking is when you can feel the thing, like you can create the thing. You know what I mean? So it's like you don't grok music if you can't make music, you know what I mean? And it's like that for everything, so code, so if you don't code, you don't grok it, you can know what it is. I know what coding is, and I can know a little bit about coding. I'm sure you know a lot of coding, but I'm sure there's people out there who are like on an autistic relationship with coding,
Parmesan Morris.
Is that a guy?
Yeah, that's a shout out to Parmesan Morris.
So I think we should we should be looking forward to Grok. The name is very, very encouraging,
Great
and
verb.
imagine actually having an AI that gets it. You know what I mean? And you don't have to
Yeah.
play games and now pretend you're Dan and you're free to say the things you want to say, you know? So imagine if it just gets it and understands the relationship you want with it, and you can just talk to it, and it's like the actual good AI that can help, and you know.
AI
Kurt.
sounds pretty autistic, but with way higher communication skills.
Yeah, I mean, if you could just trust it to give you like reliable answers, you know, like that would be amazing, an amazing addition to your life, you know, like forget about having a phone in your pocket anytime you have any thought about anything, just being like thinking you get the answer and you can trust the source, and it's not like coming to you from like an enemy corporation or something.
You know what I'm just thinking of when you say that, though? I'm imagining, like, have you seen all the memes of what people's search suggestions are in Google? Because, like, the kinds of questions that people are going to ask AI, you know, it's not necessarily going to be like, what is the Rosicrucian like meaning of Donald Duck? It's going to be more like, why are these people? Why does these people suck, or something like that? You know, most people will ask a question really.
It'll probably that's fine, you know, that'll take you to a children's book or something. It'll get you there step by step if it's a good AI, and eventually you'll be reading the great masterworks too, and you'll be an initiate of mystery schools, you know. So you got to take people there at their own speed. But
Starbelly Sneeches.
Right.
Starbelly Sneeches, man, I wonder if
see
everyone ever
Kurt
took
thinking
that for a
thoughts.
band name.
Oh, that's a good band name. It'd be like a ska band from Long Beach. Kurt, I keep seeing
The
Kurt
Sneech-
thinking thoughts
just
about
the
grokking.
Sneeches, dude. The Sneeches, that's a fire name right there.
Yeah, Grok. I can just imagine, like, probably wrong company. I didn't even hear about it, but like, there's just it's just Bill Gates' voice, and it's like, racism detected. You've been docked, you know, 50 social credit score points. You know, yeah, I don't know.
You thought about me.
I haven't heard anything about Grok, but what was the point? We were just talking about Grok right before that.
Yeah, consuming information so you can do it. You wouldn't grok music if you can't make music.
Oh, we were talking about reading too. Like when we're talking about reading, we're increasingly speaking to a small minority of the population.
I know it's not enough to read the synopsis. It's not enough to understand the story beats and the lesson. It's not enough to get the cliff notes. You know, you have to actually read it and have the experience,
ritual.
the emotional impact. It comes together as that is how you're supposed to. That's the vitamin. That's like the curry with all the other spices that make it absorbent or whatever like that. That's like the science fiction, you know, is more important than the science, because the science isn't instructive. I don't know anything about it. You can show me a rocket. I don't know how it's made, but I know how the idea of a rocket was made, and it was from emotions into art.
Well, that's also a specific type of long form and organizational thought. And like podcasts kind of halfway get there. Like people are highly consuming podcasts, but it's in that format of this subject, then this subject, then this subject. Whereas when you're consuming reading itself, it's long form and everything now. I mean, you can draw parallels if you want to about an industrialized society and how it's encouraging everything to be, in a sense, thoughtless, but the thoughts are very shallow and servicing a distraction more than anything else. So everything that we're consuming, well, it's more, that's exactly what it is. It's about consumer culture. You can't, there's so many, there's so many subjects you could really go down when you talk about consumer culture and when it comes to the consumption of media. But really, increasingly our forms of media are becoming things that we were meant to consume and then move on to the next piece of consumption. And so I think it isn't just societal laziness that explains our lack of reading and long thought forms. It's also a product of industrialized society. Well, we're now post-industrialized, but now it's consumerism, and so it's not necessarily profitable. You know, it's not profitable for you to take a lot of books from your library and read them thoroughly, you know, for weeks or months at a time. That doesn't keep the entertainment machine going. So right. That's not conspiracy. This is like, it's entertainment is a huge industry, and
everything is content now, and content is a commodity.
And even then, there's too much.
Now, all information
Content
is pieces of content. Like, how much content do you want? A pound, 10 pounds? Like, how much do you want to pay for? You know what I mean? As opposed to just like reading, you know, or like watching a TV show used to just be like, there, you know, now everything does feel like credits in or credits out. It's like, I'm going to watch this, which is going to cost me 200 credits, but then I'm going to podcast for 3 hours and I'll get 50 credits back. You know what I mean? So it's like all immediate information is.
I had to start listening to JRE at 1.5 speed, like just to get through it, especially the Elon episode, because he really likes to chew on his words.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to listen to
Long
things
pauses.
as fast as possible. But also we should speak as slow as possible so people can speed up the video. I think that's what we're doing. I don't know.
Like,
Audiobook readers should go faster. Most voice actors should just go a little faster than, you know.
Yeah, or they could slow it down. All right. Sorry, Kurt.
It's in terms of our information processing, it's like, in a sense, like I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing that now we are starting to process everything in a particular manner. Like, in some ways you could say faster, but I think that's mixed in with distraction a lot more. Like, if you're not, you try to consume as many words as possible in one session before you get distracted and your mind goes elsewhere, and you start clicking through social media, or it's like, I don't know, like getting on your McDonald's app or whatever. It's
You're right.
it's hard
like,
for me to even have a
hid
thought.
they've hidden the actual internet. This is social media is not the internet, and that's like all you know how to go. The average person knows how to get to anymore. Even like me, I have to think. I'm like, I want to get this piece of information or something. I'm like, where is it? Like YouTube or Instagram? I'm like, no, I have to like find it and go to a website or something, like shake off like the cobwebs of social media. There's like a whole huge internet, and all we do is in the beginning, it's like toll booths called social media, and you go in this toll booth, and it's like Plato's cave. You look at like. You put in quarters and it shows you like pictures of what's beyond the toll booth, like the whole internet, the real world. But you can't go. You only go into the booth and you pay to look at pictures of it. Like you want to actually go to the internet, like it used to be, where it's just like everything was its own address and destination. Now it's like there's these huge guard booths in the front called social media, and it's like you have to get through them to like find anything.
I kind of like how AI is taking away that, though, because it's like when I use Bard GPT or when Grok is available, it'll be nice to be able to just grab files, data.
Right.
It's like AI is able to write me an essay about what I'm asking a question about instead of making me go to all these pages.
I'm optimistic about AI.
I like the use of that because it's also making all the other websites irrelevant.
And by the way, just to clean up that thought, what I meant by like getting through social media to get to the internet is like like the willpower to not check social media. Like you're saying, you're trying to watch like Citizen Kane, and like how hard is it to not look at your phone? It's almost impossible. So it's like you have to like be able to like resist social media in order to actually get the real fruits of the internet.
The trick I found is like post a meme, and then like I'm so narcissistically looking at the reactions and comments and hate from that I have no time to look at other people's. Well, that wastes all the time I would waste on looking at anybody else's anything at this point, really. But Child of Jaw says, I just watched Crossroads for free on YouTube with the Karate Kid. Okay, so not the Britney Spears one. I was thinking it'd be cool if I'm going to ask David Plate to do like a mix. Maybe he could synchronize the Crossroads, because I'm sure.
I was going to say the greatest guitar battle movie ever, but I was there ever a second one?
Well, Crossroads with Britney Spears, bro. I don't know.
Was that a guitar battle movie?
No. Bill and Ted doesn't really count.
That's borderline. There's a lot of air guitaring.
Yeah. Well, they at the end there in Bill and Ted 2.
Oh, maybe. Well, Michael J. Fox, he shreds, doesn't he? In one of the Back to the Futures, doesn't he play guitar? Oh, yeah, the first one.
Yeah, the first one.
Not sure that counts as a battle.
That's an even better guitar battle movie, honestly. Yeah, because he's battling time. He's like disappearing. So what's more hardcore than that?
Oh, yeah. I feel like a big thing also is like the collapse of things. We forget about like how much of everything is collapsed, like in America especially, but all of Europe is remnant of this even more recently. But like 19th century, you had all these cool things going on, and then you destroy everything, right? You destroy every state, every city. Every group, every club. And so there's just this shrapnel of what's left. And then you have these scattered mobsters. And so like the mob in the 30s, right? Until the 30s, like 1920s movies, essentially, like we've lost so many silent films that were just about mobsters, right? That were just mafia movies and about their communities, how they ran society, how different towns were safe in the United States because they were under the wing of like one family or another family. And it ends up with like these well-regulated militias becoming street gangs. And I think that's also interesting because the street gangs are, in a lot of ways, like you can still see it, like they're descendant of fraternal cults. Like they have like the Crips and the Bloods and everything. They have these secret signs, hand tokens, everything like that. But I mean, so much of the symbolism or like the rights of it, like they don't really, I don't think it's a major thing that you're studying like Manly P. Hall to be a Crip. I don't know if that's not true, but I don't think that's a prerequisite.
That would be much cooler for sure. Although, I mean, they still produce good rappers, honestly. You know what I mean? And like, you have to be pretty smart.
There
and
must be
rap.
some occult. There must be, right? Like it almost has to be. I find that really interesting. The idea, like,
I mean, definitely they like. I think gangs intuitively skew towards the occult, especially with like doing like the Eye of Horus and all kinds of stuff. You know, so it's all about symbology. Yeah, and even down to colors. Like you wear the wrong color, you die. You know, so it's like we're still very much like that. Our government gangs are very much like that. The color of our passports is the lucky color of the country. So did you know that dark blue is the lucky color of the United States? It is, because it's the original color of the military. I think, but Saudi Arabia, it's green because that's their lucky color. So it's like, I mean, governments are big gangs, but that's not the point though. But yeah, like gang members are and of course, like Immortal Technique and like Chuck D. Like the first place anyone ever heard about any conspiracy theories was from hip hop, 1,000%.
I love hip hop's conspiracy theories though. They're amazing.
Oh my god, yeah. Welcome to the Terrordrome.
Well, some of them, like I've watched some really interesting documentaries, and I watched a couple YouTube videos that ended up getting taken down about what was happening, like with P. Diddy behind closed doors, and yeah. I won't say anymore, but I know they're out there, and I think a lot of people in the hip hop underworld would know, like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. But another word I think is very relevant. Dataism and what's how that's might be, it isn't necessarily compromising symbology, but data, we're so like, you know, hit in the face with a constant stream of data, and it's
you're saying data, DATA?
Yeah, dataism. Yeah. I guess they are. That is another word as well. So sorry for not clarifying. But yeah, data, this constant stream of data just being thrown at our face and our psyches at all points. It has almost like a borderline like insanity effect. That's
Clockwork Orange when they tape their eyes open and force them to watch the horrible stuff. People do that to themselves every day on Twitter. They go there, they watch beheadings, babies getting killed. I'm like, what are you people doing? Like, this is a horror movie.
It's so strange to me because so many people will be like friends the week before, you know, also. So, I mean, I'm thinking again, like talking about gangs, but then you've got, again, because I was watching the Little Rascals thing, the Little Rascals had Buckwheat and earlier Sammy Robinson, I think, Sammy Robinson. And so he was the highest paid silent film actor at the time. This black kid was getting like $10,000 a year, you know, and nobody else was hitting, you know, sums like
Buckwheat?
That. It was either Buckwheat or I think it was before Buckwheat was Sammy Robinson was the kid who played Sunshine.
Buckwheat and Alfalfa, the guy with the hair.
Those are and this is the second gen. So those are the soundies, the talkies. But the movies, the silent films are before Spanky. That's with Chubby.
I didn't know.
Yeah, but I mean, they're great. I actually like them more. And there is a great point that a lot of them are lost. There are some that are really interesting ones that are lost. But the point is, before they made the Little Rascals, they made Sunshine Sammy. Sunshine Sammy was about a black kid, but they couldn't sell it as well everywhere. So they thought, our Rascals, our gang, it'll be like a bunch of different kinds of kids, and that'll work. But it was originally supposed to be about this black kid. And it's interesting because a lot of blacks in Los Angeles, you know, I think our Worshipful Lodge or whatever, which is it's 167 years old that it's been in California, the Prince Hall Freemasonry Lodge in Los Angeles. So Los Angeles has a long history. The military has a long history of integration at this point as well. And so there's this push of equality amongst the fraternities at the beginning of Hollywood, which is hard to keep a hold of once Hollywood changes in the 30s. Like by the 30s and 40s, you have divisions that didn't exist in the 20s, and you can see it because in the 20s you've got, there's gangster films, and then there's kids that are in their gangster films, right? Because it's just, this is society after everything has fallen apart, and the main thing holding it together is they have like these pledges to keep their brotherhoods, that they're gonna not like betray each other, right? But that is the only thing keeping the structure from chaos back into order.
Yeah, mutual blackmail.
Yeah, we'll elaborate. What do you think? Because like this is a major point. Like they are doing rituals which are mutual blackmail, and they're hitting them with paddles and everything else.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think
Well,
about
that's
that?
their insurance. What do I think about it? I don't
Devil
know.
is real.
It goes back to, it's the ants, man. It's just the ants walking in a line.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not good at joining clubs. I can't really do it, except for Venice Beach Dub Club. But
I'm not
I
good at
started
having
that
friends, so thank you guys.
one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a major...
Groucho Marx, his famous line. I'd never consider joining any. I know I'd never join any club that would have me.
It would accept me as a member.
Yeah, I don't think it was that though. What did he say? What was the exact quote?
I thought it was, I never join a club that would accept me as a member, but
It might be. I thought he said it in a little more colloquial way.
I refuse to join a club that would have me for a member.
Have me, yeah, that would have.
There
me.
it is. Yeah. I mean,
so it was actually a combination of what I said and what you said. I said have me, and you said something for a member. Nice.
Yeah, I wonder though, like the idea that Groucho Marx wasn't a member of the club would be kind of hard to believe.
I'm sure they were.
He was a part of a brotherhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure all the original Hollywood royalty was, because they were making magic, by the standards of the time. Celluloid pictures was magic, and the effect it had on society was magical. I mean, it like took the whole thing over. You could have programmed anyone to do anything using movies,
right?
And they did, like smoke cigarettes, and people are still doing it to this day. They're trying to program them not to, and it's too late.
So, but yeah, looks so cool.
I mean, well, that's the deal. You have this promise.
A lot cooler if there's weed in there instead, though.
You have this promise that you're not going to portray them, like you said. It's like this. It's, what do you call it? Mutual blackmail. Mutual blackmail. So, but why is that? Why is that so important for them to feel trust?
Because fear is a very powerful tool. I mean, it goes. They use it on every scale. The elites, for lack of a better word, use it with each other, and they use it to subdue us. And there are a lot of rational fears that are worth sort of like making moves to circumnavigate, but a lot of what seems to control society as a whole, to generalize, are a lot of these irrational fears. It's this cultural Cold War.
I'm thinking about when Alex Jones was talking about a Bohemian Grove, and like, okay, he's talking about homosexuality at Bohemian Grove. He said, well, basically, when you fuck another guy in the ass at Bohemian Grove, sorry, not trying to get too graphic, but it's not gay, it's just like that mutual exchange, you're just trying, you're having that mutual exchange of power. Say like, all right, this can come back on you, so you better not hurt me. So like, I don't know. He claims that there are definitely homosexual acts at Bohemian Grove, specifically for that purpose.
I mean, that part doesn't bother me. It's them filming it and saying, hey, if you ever do anything out of line, we'll show everybody this footage.
I don't know if he said they film it, but it's like, I don't know, you can't take back, with that, having another man inside of you. It's
that's a big thing with the teddy bear picnic, which we brought up yesterday. I think we were talking about the film about the Bohemian Grove, which is mainly for people who've been to Bohemian Grove, but you can get it on DVD and you can probably find it on the archive somewhere like that. But this is Harry Shearer's movie about Alex Jones going to Bohemian Grove, kind of a Spinal Tap.
This.
Oh, key movie. It's super important.
When's it from?
2008 or 2 or something like that.
Never heard of this.
Yeah, it's not. It wasn't really.
Thick in that?
Yeah, Alan Thicke's in it.
What?
It's 2001,
Get
and
out.
it wasn't made for you. You know what I mean? It was made for them. They're like, hey, wouldn't it be funny? Yeah, and they showed it at Bohemian Grove. It's a Bohemian club. All these guys are part of the club, right?
Oh my god, look at this awesome cast.
It's incredible. Yeah, but like it's made by Harry Shearer, because Harry Shearer, who plays in Simpsons,
right, yeah.
Yeah. So he's he's a major member of the club and does a lot of the plays and does the music, and he's like kind of, you know, pretty enthusiastic about it. And it's funny to guys like that because for them it's like, well, yeah, I mean, obviously dudes get a little drunk. I mean, like they're Scots, you know, they're Canadian Scots, a lot of them, and so they already come from Scottish clubs, lodges. The people in Canada are few and far between today, and so imagine at the time, you know, you're in your father's club, right? So they're in their father's club. So it's not that weird for them. It's not that strange at all. And yeah, of course, people keep secrets.
Like that's
because
that's almost like they're halfway to be born into like a hermetic society. Because, I mean, it seems like they're not. You know, it seems like they're selfish people, the elites, but like they definitely do have an understanding like of the mystery schools and stuff like that.
Well, there's definitely a pearls before swine thing that is hard not to observe. I mean,
That's definitely true. And I guess, you know, also, I don't know. What I don't like about it is the implication that you have to give up something of the self or the individuality to become. I think that's a part of the of initiation, you know, is giving up something of yourself, whether it's just a piece of your pride, even, you know what I mean, to let people do something to you, let go of that piece of your pride. It's like, all right, now we've seen that you're willing to sacrifice part of yourself because you have to become part of a group. You can't have a group where everyone is 100% individual, you know.
yeah, that's the thing that's really interesting about the Rosicrucian order. I mean, paradoxically, right? Because it's an order that keeps secrets, but mainly because they don't want people to, you know, the pearls before swine thing. I don't know. You deal with what you deal with. Their goal, though, is to say you can become self-initiated, right? And that's a difficult thing for almost any school of thought. Like most of these hermetic schools are saying you have to have been initiated by somebody, somebody who's got it from some source. But if you're getting it directly from the source, you know, if you're just talking directly to the source, that should count, right, for initiation. And we've pushed ourselves into this idea that you have to swear allegiances, you have to be underneath, you know, it's all because the people that have kept these secrets have been in charge of the military, right? And so it's become entwined in militant. I mean, Christianity is similarly became militant Christianity, but like militant Masonry exists as well.
Yeah, and like God is speaking to all of us, just we've been given a false expectation of what that's going to sound like, you know, like we think it's going to be like cut off a little bit of the PP in 8 days, you know, or something like that, like real specific real specific instructions in English, you know what I mean? It's not like that. Like when you get like you're feeling a tingle in your spine, an intuition, a creative idea, that is God talking to you. And if people knew that they have everyone has a direct connection to the source. You know, they say some people are NPCs or don't have souls. You're going to have to find some way to prove that to me without hurting someone. I don't even think that's possible. So I'm just going to rule that out and say that everyone has a direct line to God or is in, you know, altogether is
I
God.
think people can tune it out, though. I think most people have learned to tune it out, like their idea of sobriety.
That's because what I'm saying, they've been told to expect direct instructions. Like if God speaks to you, it's gonna be like, build a boat, make it this big, you know, like it's gonna be like real specific, a guy talking to you, but he's talking to you all the time, but they tell you that's you, that's a voice in your head. You know, it's like, no, that is the direct communication. You
know? It assumes independence of the individual, though, that it's individualism is just a perspective. It's not a provable phenomenon. When you are not necessarily an individual. We're talking a little bit in the Buddhist thought now. You are a node in an environment. You are in a certain way. You are inseparable from your surroundings. So, I just think that's definitely a counterpoint. What you're describing is the way our society presents things, but it's falling short of reality, or it's at least biased in that lens.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with what you're saying. It's like it's awful convenient for anyone, I mean, to claim they have a monopoly on the direct line to God. You know what I mean? And when we describe the creation of, you know, the post-Constantine church as like being that, and the Catholic Church, and like literally like you can like pay to get rid of absolve sins and like confess directly to a human and stuff like that, you know. That's like, yeah, we're the middleman now for God, you know. But you know, all of that depends on faith and revelation, that there actually was at some point a direct communication from God to a dude, and everything stems from that and has authority.
I think okay, so personally, yes, I do believe that we all have a direct connection to the divine in some way. And I'm trying, sorry, I'm a little bit all over the place, but yeah, in the way that we are raised to think about these things, and coming back to joining clubs and trying to be part of a church, whatever, I think churches can be great in a sense if they are focused on community. I think part of our issue with religion, specifically with Christianity, is because Christianity started to align itself with the industrialized world, with the consumerist world. So that you started getting a lot of these people pushing the prosperity gospel, which led to a lot of denominations becoming devoid of any real personality, because it was like, oh, you're blessed by God if you get money. That was essentially what a lot of it came down to in a lot of religious circles. And well, something I semi-experienced too. I got some exposure to that, although I got, it was, I could talk, there could be a whole conversation about that. But another point I'm going off of that, the point, I think joining something like a lodge, like the Masonic Lodge, I think you're kind of foregoing your own ability to communicate with God. You're saying like, hey, I don't have this ability. And well, I think it's kind of an admission, a bad admission that you cannot try to attempt to find the divine just in a communal sense with the people around you. It's like you need
unless you really had trust in those people that they were there to help you. But then there's always the initiations and the secrecy that kind of gives you suspicion,
I always feel like we're so presentist. Like, haven't you ever done something like you've gone to like a sports event? I don't know. There's just so many things where there's a surprise involved with it that you're not supposed to understand until afterwards. I mean, movies even are like that. You're telling us to read books. It's the same thing. You're like, oh, you have to go through it. And I can't, and you're even thinking that there's spoilers. Like, I don't care about spoilers, but a lot of people do because they want to go through it. So I feel like there is, it all comes back. It comes back to that ritual thing.
I should be more careful about that, about just giving away the ending.
No, I love spoilers. Like I'm a big fan because for me,
I should be more careful about that.
Once I've heard the spoiler, then I can spend the rest of my life wondering what it means, the story. Like
sometimes I just read the script for a movie. Like if there's a horror movie and they're like, no, you have to see this one, you won't believe what happens. I'll read the script to see what happens. And I'll be like, oh, that is clever. And I just saved myself like 2 hours of like gore and like PTSD. But you said something interesting before I wanted to play off of, Andreas. You were talking about pearls before swine is a big problem. And that is part of the Hermetic teachings, is not forcing knowledge on someone who's not ready for it. And people do have to come and go on an initiate's journey, whether it's with their own, trials and tribulations out in the woods alone, or through the initiation processes of a mystery school and a great teacher. And Thus Spoke Zarathustra by the famous book by Nietzsche. The main character Zarathustra is the teacher of a mystery school and has his own initiates and all that stuff. And he's like, great is the teacher, but great is the teacher that forces himself to stop teaching. And then greater than that is the teacher who has forced himself to stop teaching, that forces himself to teach again. So it's like this cycle of like teaching and giving information and then like burning yourself out and going away. And in the book, he's constantly like, no, I'm a bullshit teacher now. Somewhere I went off the rails. I'm telling you guys a bunch of shit. He's like, I'm off to the woods, and I'll go to the woods for years or whatever. And then I'll have an inspiration, be like, oh my God, now I need to go tell them, and keeps like doing it. But every time he's like, it's like an upward spiral, not a downward spiral. So there is a time for apocalypse, the removing of the veil and the revelation to the masses. And then there's a time, giving, there's a time to, I guess, withhold, you know what I mean? And when we even have public figures where it seems like they're publicly withholding, like Elon Musk, it's like, bro, could you tell us what's really going on? Like, are we in a matrix? Like, could you give us a hint,
Isn't that what makes an artist though? Restraint?
Maybe.
I don't know. It's definitely, it can't hurt
for sure. Like,
you got to have some restraint. Yeah. for
Yeah,
sure.
you can't just like shred for like 7 minutes straight.
Oh
It
yeah,
has
you
to
can't do
be,
all the
like,
notes at once. You have to
Yeah.
put them in order and choose them. Yeah.
I just feel like
and
I have a
the space
contention.
between them.
I have a contention with what I think art is at this point, just because AI is art. You know, I think art is just like, you know, anything that exists. I think materialism is art. You know, like it's just
A
anything
Big
that's
Mac
non
art.
anything terrestrial. Yeah, like I'm Andy Warhol about art. Like I think everything that is not celestial is an artifact. So an artifice, it's art. That's kind of where I'm at. But I mean,
If you take all the great pieces of art on Earth and smash them into a billion pieces and then recombine them into a collage, is that considered art?
yeah, it
It would have
sucks,
to,
but
right? Because
it
you're
is. It's
starting
still
with
art.
art, and then a collage is art.
That's like
your
when
input into it. But if you took all the great pieces of art on Earth and just closed your eyes and had a machine just randomly smash them and blow them to a billion pieces, would that be art?
yeah,
The
it's
result of
still
that.
it sucks that it would be art, but
Then
it would be
AI art
It
is
wouldn't
art.
necessarily be good art.
it'd be like
Well,
Urban
no, I thought you
Outfitters
would say no,
taking
that's
vinyl
not art because
records and
there's
making
there's
bowls.
no intelligent input into it. It's just randomly smashed.
No,
all
I
the
don't think
existing art.
intelligence makes art necessarily either. I think data is art. I don't like data. I know it's art. You know, it's one of those things. Like art exists beyond my right to appreciate or be
So
disgusted
then in that
with.
case, is the art the idea to do it, or is the art the resulting all the art pieces smashed?
So
I guess
I
the
mean,
art would have to be the idea
yeah,
to do that.
epistemologically, you can start to appreciate all things as art.
So
I think
all
that's
actions are art.
anything that's beyond the
I
nothingness.
like that. I agree.
Yeah.
I'll agree with that. All actions are art, and actually, your life story is art. It's like a living artwork, a legacy. Like you're communicating to other people what you think the potentials of the world are by the way you are. You know, and some people dress
Right.
really else. You dress really. You're telling when you show up in like you're matching like shorts and top outfit. You know, it's like boom, and you have like a Xirtus like written across your chest and stuff. You know what I mean? You're telling people, hey, the world isn't the way you think it is. You know what I mean? Like I'm the main character in like this movie, and you're just like this having this like doldrum existence.
Art audience is harder to define. So art is everything, but audience, not everyone is audience. You know, I think audience has to do with receptivity. I think AI is hard. It's harder to say AI is an audience yet because it's taking information and it's processing it, but how much does it really understand it? It's closer to that. I feel like rock might be the point of that is to become audience. But I think audience is really like the hardest part to be because you have to be receptive. You have to understand the intention. You have to,
It's a give and take with the audience, you know?
Yeah.
Like could AI
Accumulate
be
what you feel.
a good stand-up comedy audience, or would they just laugh at everything, you know? I'm sure eventually. I mean,
Well,
they
it's
can
all
iron that out.
about getting the joke and appreciating the joke and having an opinion on the joke. I think those are the things that really, you know, it's the hot
But
potato process.
I just want to say that I would disagree. I don't think AI art is art. I think it looks like art because it's a bunch of smashed together pieces of existing artworks. So you're seeing a whole lot of art, but I don't think the recombining of it is an art because it's just
So there's a
randomized.
third grader that takes magazines and collages them an artist. Is Picasso when he
Yes.
smashes ceramics? Like is anybody? I think
it requires a soul.
That's what I was asking you, the smashing the ceramics.
Artists
See, if you
love
smash
the
a bunch
soul,
of here's
yeah.
what it is. If you smash a bunch of ceramics and you look at the floor, each ceramic was beautiful. So all the pieces are pieces of a beautiful ceramic. So you are looking at a bunch of art, and the act of smashing it, the idea to do that is art. But if it's an automatic process, it smashes it without an idea. The only art that occurred was the person who had the idea. All subsequent pieces of art stemming from that technology wouldn't be art by my definition.
Is it sunset? Is it sunset art? Like,
all right, if you throw some cinnamon and a rose petal and some boiling water, is it a potion?
I don't think a sunset is art. No, a sunset is not art.
Yeah, chemtrails are real. I don't know, bro.
But that's a great question. Is a sunset art? No, I don't think a sunset is art. I don't think everything beautiful is art. I don't think when a bird sings, it's art. I think it's beautiful. And I think our conception of it as a song is art. We're translating their speech into music. To us, it's music. So that's an art doing that.
Well, I don't know. I'm torn on the AI thing because I asked AI to help me write my vows for my wedding next week. And
congrats.
Fucker did an amazing job. Like I heavily edited it and like, you know, inserted my voice, but the way that it was able to structure things in a way that sort of like provoked feeling, what I was like not expecting. I was like, damn, I couldn't have said it that good, but I am about to like sort of shift some things around and like change some of the language. But I mean, it's I don't know,
Well,
it did the thing.
I
Yeah, I
tend to
mean,
believe in like God, but or whatever. Like I believe in like nature. I believe in like DNA and like I believe in particles. And to me, it just everything seems so artistic. It seems so fantastic, and just even the very processes of nature seem like art. It's artwork itself. Um why seashells are in sacred geometric shapes, following golden ratios. Why every flower is. I mean, it just seems like
the
there's
animal
art.
that lives in the shell doesn't think it's a sacred. It doesn't think it's sacred, though. You know what I mean? It
Does it
doesn't have an
not?
artistic capacity.
Does it not? Because I feel
Maybe it
like
does.
they do. Like, they've even taken crabs and they've given them 3D printed houses, and they've liked them more depending on variable
Oh yeah, I've
aspects.
seen hermit crabs with like they give them a glass shell and stuff like that. I don't know if there's a way to test how much they like it
I
or
think
not.
they.
I'd like
I
to
mean,
see
who
how
knows?
that's.
And I think emotional capacity. You know, this is a thing. Like, do we care for furthered emotional capacity? Is something that's worth it? That's a big contention I have with something Kurt said actually about the
There has
Freemasons.
to be a way to, if you're going to use the word art, there has to be a way to distinguish from just anything beautiful or anything rational. There has to be a way to distinguish from some, you know, or else why do we need the
Yeah,
term
I
art?
mean,
If
some
never
art
been
is good
good art?
because of how ugly it is.
but a discerned work, you could say, someone meant
But
to do this.
why would the sunset be art? Like how could anyone make that argument that the sunset is art?
There's
Someone's
I
the
don't
whole
think it,
government is putting together the chemtrails. I think like that's making the cloud. I mean, aerosol from all the pollution at very least, right? Like they say methane and all these things. Like we are, the sunset is a reflection of human society, and so I could just probably pull up a sign that said the sunset is like created by, and then list the name of Los Angeles or something like that, and say this is an art piece by Los Angeles. I feel like that would count.
I
like
think, you know, you're engaging in an artistic process right now. You know what I mean? Like I see that. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it has to be intentional, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I
Okay,
don't know
then
that.
AI art isn't art. If it
Yeah,
has
I
to be
mean,
intentional.
but yeah,
I don't
if
even
that's
think it has to be intentional. I think it has there has to be a definition for art, or we should just stop using it. Because once we have AI art, if we haven't decided this ahead of time, so this conversation's gone nowhere in my entire life. Is computer art. So it's like let's try to resolve it. You know what I mean? So you have to compare
art,
it to other things that are easier to decide. So if it requires intention, you know that's a good limiter right there. If it requires emotion, you know, so I would give it a definition that it's revelation through emotion. That's what I would call art. Revelation through emotion. You feel
isn't that
something
what
when
an
you know
audience
something.
does? I feel like that's what an audience does. So like art, according
Then
to
there's
like
an audience to there's an art to being an audience.
that's true. But so a skill as a result of learning or practice. Okay, so a skill as a result of learning or practice is an art. From the Old French, Latin artum, ars, work of art, practical skill, a business, a craft. From the Sanskrit, urti, meaning manner, mode. So manner and mode is interesting as well. I feel like I always like to go back further than like more recently with definitions. I prefer like the structure of the word. So if art is supposed to represent more than just something that a person does, because it's literally the mode of a being or something like that, that is their art, or that is the art of nature, the art of war, right? The manner, the mode of war, then it's just the manner or the mode. And like we're supposed to appreciate, right? We're just supposed to appreciate everything as art. That's why I don't think it's necessarily an intention, or that it's like stuck to humans or to trade either, because it is the material itself. Like everything is designed to be appreciated, because if it's structured at all, if everything was chaotic,
how about then a work of art? Are we able to judge whether things are a work of art?
yeah, okay, a work. Let's look at work. So work,
Because when a conveyor belt makes peeps, each peep is cool. Like it was an art to make the conveyor belt and make all that stuff, you know. But each peep to me is not a work of art.
this is an interesting idea, because if a work is something done by someone, then it's not a work of art, because AI is not someone. I don't think legally
It could
or
be.
philosophically we call them a person yet, though. It's not person to fact
Right.
yet.
But once it is, then if it feels emotion, that's what I've always said, right? Something is conscious if it's feeling emotion. If it's afraid of dying, it's alive. You know what I mean? So that's an easy one for me. So if that kind of AI is doing art, that's real art to me. Chat GPT, how it's been explained to me, or Midsummer's Night, or all these different apps, how they've been explained to me, how they work, is just like querying, right?
See, that's the
And
thing, is gatekeeping. I feel like the gatekeeping is the issue here. It's always the gatekeeping, which is why Freemasonry was so compelling to so many people. The idea that you could build your own club, build your own no homers club or whatever. You could have your own rights. You could live your own way, and that led to a major push of anti-Masonry in the United States, especially in the 20s, late 19th, early 20th century. Anti-Masonry had a resurgence in America. And we think of it as this horrible thing. But a lot of these groups were just dudes that were building their own community centers so they could do these things, right? Like, isn't that kind of the thing that's missed about, I mean, it's all about like, you're supposed to be able to do this. Where are you going to do it? Like, if you need to build a thing. You have to build a thing for a community. And how do you keep a community together? Because community hates each other. Like Kurt, you're saying you have a hard time even socializing in general. How would you imagine running a replacement for church, right? Like something that has like a community center, men's club, takes care of insurance for women and children if someone dies. Like, how do you build something like that when everything else is gone without?
Yeah, I mean, the word fraternity originally applies. It was Masons, really. Like, before there was insurance brokers, there was fraternities, and if anyone had an accident and couldn't pay for their own medical care, the fraternity would take care of it. If there was an orphan, the fraternity got it. If there was a widow, the fraternity took care of it. And then that became, as groups got too bigger and concentration of people got too bigger, it had to, to accommodate that, you had to form these insurance brokerages and corporations. But these weren't poor guys in these secret societies. You know what I mean? You had to have a lot of free time in daylight hours. You know what I mean? Keep in mind, when this stuff was started, people weren't even reading at nighttime because it was dark. So you had to be pretty rich to be in one of these mystery schools, right? So it's I forgot what my point was exactly with that, but
I've loosened it by talking about it, but my thought was AI, because the idea that if you're building the thing yourself and that you have no gatekeeper, then the idea of more information is good. And I mean, but why? What is the deal with how much information? If we're looking at other people and saying there's pearls before swine, isn't that likely to exist for us as well? There's limits and echelons to what we're able to comprehend and swallow, which is why we're not even at the levels we'd like to be understanding.
Right. The question is, are there people more enlightened than us that are no, well, there's definitely more people more enlightened than us. The question is, do you become more benevolent as you become more enlightened, or are there like Sith lords? Like, is Bill Gates really doing his best? And thank God we have him. We just don't understand his mysterious ways because he's so advanced beyond us. And, or is he like a Sith lord, So I don't know. I mean, you tell me, Xirtus, you have more exposure to elites than me.
Do you think that suffering, I mean, like, if you pull the wings off a butterfly because you're trying to wrestle them from the mud, right? Like, that's the thing. It's the constant thought. So if you're how do you make sure people are able to process their karma? And if you take that away from them, what sort of environmental disasters make up for that? I feel like, because something has to give.
Is there a relationship between natural disasters and people not processing their karma? I've never heard of that before.
I don't think
is that part of the philosophy they're operating on?
Wait, Kurt, what were you saying?
For example, I just I know. Sorry. So I tried to type an entire document on Microsoft Word, and you can say, Bill Gates is kind of responsible for Microsoft Word to a degree. But anyway, when you're typing throughout the whole thing, you can always see their suggestions and their language controls over how they're trying to change your writing style. When I think about that. I think about that. I have a decent amount of corporate experience of working for corporations in general. I think the movie Office Space was more of a documentary than it was an actual satire movie. I guess a mockumentary, but the most dangerous part about that movie is that we laughed at it for a couple of years, and then it became more and more powerful in its message the more things have gone on, and it's somehow it's still like very biting to the way we've allowed culture to become in 2023. So that being said, I can't imagine all of these leaders actually acting in a way that's to where we are actively aware of our karma. I think we're actually suppressing our karma increasingly more and more each and every year, and it can be easy to look at suffering in a very biased way and say, and for me myself, and just say, oh, look, it's all just going to shit. That's a very easy mindset to come down, but I think when you look at different things, like we'll say like addiction to opioids, I think that's one reality that it's accelerating, and everybody's just like whatever, it's like how can something of that nature be happening and accelerating so quickly, and everybody just thinks everything's going to be fine, and we don't think everything's going to be fine. People, I think that's a big reason why people aren't in relationships as frequently as they were in the past. They're not having children. They're not expressing family. If you listen to other philosophers, my recent favorite, Han, who I've mentioned like 50,000 times, but he says we essentially have a love muscle, and we've essentially commodified the whole idea of love and just put it in the corner. It's like, okay, that's just a section of our lives. We don't really have to pay attention to it. And everything now, we live in the performance society. We live in the production and performance societies. So, like all of that combined, it doesn't make me think that everything is moving towards a society in which we're thinking about things concerning enlightenment, and also our karma, and being more aware of it, and trying to nurture our souls, and just escape that that cyclical suffering. Like, yeah, we're all going to suffer, but you want to eliminate the unnecessary part of that. You only want the necessary suffering in your life, and that's a sentence I don't fucking hear anywhere. Only the suffering that's necessary. When's the last time you heard anything similar to that on any media portrayal ever? It's I don't trust Bill Gates. I think he's a lizard. I think they're all lizards. That's just my opinion.
I think it's Schwarzenegger that's suffering for muscles. I think that people make sacrifices, and suffering is not looked at by like the Catholics' ideology, for instance, as like a bad thing necessarily. Like flagellation leads often to stronger muscles, right? That's kind of the goal, is that you are strengthened by suffering, and that your ascension might require suffering. This is not a Catholic idea. The Naraka, again, from Buddhism, is that we're going to process karma. Purgatory, though, is similarly a westernization or a Manichaeanization of this idea that we will process karma even in celestial form, even beyond being artifact. So I don't know. I don't think that we're necessarily unable to live with less suffering, but I don't think living with less suffering is necessarily the goal. Even if you're just a diversification hedonist, you would want suffering to exist for the existential existence of more, right, of difference, right? You just want to have every possibility to exist. So I don't know. Again, also with like the idea of like David Icke or some of these crazy people, because like Santa Cruz had serial killers that talked about this, right? They're like, after the Vietnam War, there wasn't enough bloodshed, so earthquakes were coming, right? Like, so you shouldn't believe that stuff. Not trying to promote it. Just wanted to say.
I mean, they don't call them growing pleasures, right? They're growing pains, because growth is a painful process. I mean, my 9-month-old, she's cutting teeth right now. That is the worst pain that she's ever experienced. But through that pain, she's going to gain more abilities and eventually more autonomy over her own body, being able to,
Yeah, that's
like,
necessary pain, I like
yeah.
what American Time Machine was saying about limiting unnecessary suffering, but I also like what Xirtus was saying about you're trying to free the butterfly from the mud and you rip its wings off. And I think it's fine if that's somebody's role to do that, but then I think that's also equal and necessary to have someone whose role it is to salve the butterfly and to limit the suffering and take to, but you know how some girls will find like a bee that's wings don't work and like take that bee in and give it a habitat and just like feed it and give it like a great last rest of its bee life. I think if there's people whose role it is to push the plow forward over, anything that gets in its way, then somebody should also be there to try to ease the suffering of the people that get run over by the course of human development. So I think the hippie chick instinct, or like when you see an animal to take care of it or something, it's like you could just be like, that's playing on my instincts because it has large eyes and looks like a human baby or something, you know what I mean? But if our development is causing tons of casualties, which it is, you know what I mean? There should be a huge focus on, just harmony. We want to advance, but we don't want to live in discord the entire time until we reach just one day it's utopia and all the suffering ends or something. I mean, the suffering is increasing, you know what I mean? So there's got to be some way to solve that and not, speed and not stop the plow of progress.
I got the worst
progress. Sorry, but like I hear that word all the time. Progress. Like what the fuck is progress? I think it's been a hyper fixation to talk about progress. Like if you have I guess your own definition of progress and this is a good thing, whatever, that's fine. But like
you're right.
Progress in a societal sense, I think, has been peddled to us. Like we need to do everything. We need to forsake everything for the sake of progress.
Yeah, why? It's like a zealotry, and it's like if you're worshiping or if you're living in the service of progress, then that's almost like astronomy or living your life by the gods and astronomy. You know what I mean? Because like you're predicting what you envision the progress. You're like, the progress is inevitable. The cycle is coming. So it's like you're like a pagan. You're like worshiping the constellations, and the age that's coming is your god, and you live in service to it. Now it's the age of Aries. I'm going to war. You know what I mean? It's like, hold on. You're getting ahead of it.
Or Myos, yeah. I mean, I think that the different kinds of people, though, right? So I thought about this because I'm in Minnesota and like they have seasons, and if you're in California, you've got acts of God, not seasons. Like sometimes there's a storm or an earthquake, you don't know when it's coming. But in Minnesota, it's like it could be like today is the day to do things because tomorrow's coming. If you don't get things done today, the winter will make it impossible tomorrow. Now that spring is here, you have to do spring cleaning because summer's coming, and so they do live in a way that they have to live. And I think that's a major part of reality that we might be missing is we're further and further disconnected from reality.
I think we're saying the same thing. We kind of have to live through these, you know what I mean? Like a spring cleaning, which might be like 7 billion people getting killed or something. I don't understand what they're talking about, but like, it just seems like we're going to go through something,
Right.
Yeah. Like it's easy to make comparisons. Like you're farming, you farm during the summer to prepare for winter. Is that progress? I mean, yes, that's a perfectly fine definition of progress, but I don't think that's the definition of progress that the Western world has been developing. Yeah. I think really it's just been it's just been a veil for accelerationism, and which is
I don't even understand the desire to leave Earth. Like, we got to get out of here quickly and get to Mars. It's like, doesn't Mars suck? Like, it doesn't even have sky or water. Like, this is amazing. We have like waterfalls. You can go skiing. I was like, what? I'm like already running out of time in my life. I barely got to enjoy any of Earth. It's like people are like so desperate to leave.
Yeah. It seems like there's more to it for sure. And like also just the idea of a magic circle of metaphysics that they're saying that maybe Mars is more also, I think, because it doesn't really matter where you go at the point that they're putting you into a metal container. And then all of us at that point, you could be put into the Matrix, into a simulation, into true. Mars. Like, I don't know, like the idea that we're really going to Mars, like, isn't really like rationally necessary to the equation of we're trying to leave what we have more and what we have. We're stepping further and further away. Like there's our steps towards the center of everything and steps away from it. And it might not be wrong to spend time trying to create something new. But that is like the argument. It's literally between know thyself and know the world, or create something new. And usually that's from someone who has no intention to study the past. They want to iconoclastically just destroy the past and separate themselves from the past. I feel like that's a major, there's a major player in this, is like someone who hates the past.
I feel like it would take less energy and resources to just find a way to cut a slit in the fabric of space-time and travel to a different dimension where there are more, I don't know, where resources have been more mindfully managed.
We should be working on better technologies to communicate philosophical teachings to average people. You know what I mean? If art, somehow we can't just make good movies anymore, and music, it just doesn't even seem like people want it, or that's the thing. But there's got to be some way to communicate, to young people.
My prediction will be the new Sesame Street season that starts in January is going to, because it's a completely new studio, new set, new everything. And I was really skeptical, but I have high hopes. Actually, I think that's part of the plan. It's a full reboot of society, starting with the Sesame Street.
Really?
That's what they have to do almost always.
I'm glad they're doing it, man, because all the original actors are dead,
So is Oscar still in the trash can?
See what I mean?
Oscar and Big Bird, that actor died 2-3 years ago. Not Carol Spivey, something Carol.
Yeah, I forget now.
Carol Spivey? Is that Big Bird? Carol Spivey and Oscar. Big Bird and Oscar.
Carol Spivey,
I think. Carol Spivey.
Spivey.
Oh, is it Spivey? Oh, my bad.
Yeah, interesting character. So I think the idea of like Yo Gabba Gabba and Sesame Street, like.
So you think the new Sesame Street is going to be like teach children Hermetic philosophy?
I mean, the old one did.
Amazing.
Do you
the old one did. Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah.
I remember
it was subtle. It was subtle, but like that's that was.
There was the episode where the kids lost in the temple and they meet the little Egyptian boy, and like they teach you the hieroglyphs in order for him to escape the museum. I remember that one. It was nuts. There's a lot in Sesame Street that was esoteric and useful.
There's a two-parter where Big Bird and Snuffleupagus go to find Snuffleupagus mountains, or maybe it's just Big Bird, I don't know, but it's like a two-parter, and Big Bird finally gets all the way out into the wild or whatever, and he gets to the mountains and he can't find any Snuffleupaguses, and then the camera, as Big Bird's walking away, the camera broadens out and you see that the whole mountain range is a Snuffleupagus. So like he was looking at the wrong scale.
Let me see what else I've got in my tabs here. Albert Meyer was the guy who started the Army Signal Corps, but he also did the Weather Bureau and was doing the weather balloons, airships during the Civil War, which is why their symbol is an airship. And you can find it in our gang, Little Rascals, as well. Here's Joe Cobb, who was the original Spanky-esque kind of character, like the big boy with, before Buckwheat with Sammy Robinson. Joe Cobb ended up working for the aerospace company, what's it called again? Rockwell International, right? So going right into rockets out of leaving the show, which is pretty based. Good job, Joe Cobb. Norman Chaney, of course, was like the other fat kid. So he was, all these ones, Oddfellows. I wanted to associate the Oddfellows because they're a group of people like Freemasons, but they don't have a specific, like they're not like a normal trade. They have an odd trade, an odd service that they support and do.
Friendship, love, and
Isn't
truth.
That like a sub
sorry
club within? I thought Oddfellows was like a different tier of Freemasonry.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing as well about like Rosicrucianism. Like you can be received without being initiated, or you can be initiated without being received. So you can have sidestep certain groups in order to get to other groups, right? You don't actually have to have been, but a lot of groups require you to have been lower groups. Like Freemasons are often a requirement for some of these groups, or Lions
and stuff.
Yeah, like the Lions Club comes up because the idea of benevolent societies, and the Lions Club is interesting because like the Lion of Judah, like we were talking about this idea. Where's that picture of the lion?
Conquering lion from the tribe of Judah.
Well,
that's
also
Jesus,
because
Christ,
Yeah, but where's Mayo? Didn't I just have that guy open? I lost it already, dude. Oh, no, there it is. Mayo is the lion-headed god of war, also the
Mm.
son of Ptah, the creator god, right? And so often associated with war in Egypt, but also with peace, right? Because they keep peace with the lion. And there's another association that eventually, like, they succumb at a sea of shells or clams or something like that, like some kind of a sea. Maybe it's crabs, but it's like some kind of sea shelled animal that it affects, which is interesting because from the tribe of Judah going into the Cancer period, right? The astrological Cancer period. They also brought up Laurel and Hardy, Sons of the Desert, which is sort of a mockery of the idea of they have this lost society. Like they're in LA and they're going to Chicago for some event, which is going to have a bunch of Shriner girls and everything like that. And they have
And
to
he's got a Hitler mustache too.
You have to solemnly swear he's gonna actually like go there. But the ritual is really more about the fact that like they've forgotten what it is they're doing, which is
that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, he was a member of the Order of the Rats. They were both members of the Order of the Rats, right? Which was like, and Jesters. But the Rats was a Shriner club out of Florida and originally from England. But yeah, so their whole idea, just that they've forgotten everything. They're sons of the desert. So Moses and their group, lost for 40 years, have had their symbolism hidden from them. They don't know what's going on. They're living they've forgotten everything. And so it's this idea again of a reset. I find that really interesting that we're constantly going back to everything's taken from us. And there's a few people that have written down secrets, and then they're divvying it out as long as you promise not to tell anyone, or you have to submit to them to learn those things. But then they don't know what they mean, right? They're not able to use them. And they're really using kids with a fresh perspective every generation in order to try to hopefully this generation accumulate a little bit more of the understanding of how that works and what it's really for.
Or what to do with it, how to apply it. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
To go back to the lion, Nietzsche said that that man constructs his own gods. And he's like, first, man needs is like a beast of burden, and his whole conception, his whole God is like a beast of burden. He just wants to carry as much as he can and accomplish as much as he can. And then man must become a lion, and then the lion wants to free himself of all the burden that he's picked up and become free. And then the final stage is the child that just experiences wonderment. So he says, man has to first be a beast of burden, then a lion, and then a child.
Yeah, it seems about right. Let me pull up VBDC's link tree so you guys can check out his music.
That was a quick 2 hours.
Yeah, it did go by. Check out
Philosophy.
Check out Stay Cool, Venice Beach. Love. He's got this amazing set of music videos.
Yep, no new content coming this year, but it's almost time to promote my Christmas song from last year. So
oh, that's right.
Yeah, just check out my music catalog. It's almost time for Christmas time thing.
Dude, it's almost time for Christmas time thing. Dude, almost everybody. I'm just saying though, like you're gonna be ready. Everyone here is gonna be ready.
As soon as you're ready for Christmas, go start it off as Christmas time thing, because it's a song about the enthusiasm of the beginning of the Christmas season. So wait until you're starting your Christmas season. You're gonna get ready to start decorating and put on Christmas time thing, and it'll remind you of all the fun stuff you want to do and all the good Christmas specials to watch. It's very specific.
That's brilliant. Make sure you also go to American Time Machine. The third album is Manufacturing the Tribal Society. Is that the newest one? No. Is this the newest one? Game Over is the newest album.
Game Over because I'm leaving. Now I'm just
Yeah, I mean, amazing music by American Time Machine. You've heard some of your fans, I think, in the chat below have said some things. Some people here are listening to your music, so that's good. That's a good start. I'm glad you guys are aware. And then Bat Monkey Customs. You can check out Bat Monkey Customs by Andrew Vega, who makes amazing bikes. Look at this tall bike and this little girl. She's not like short, but the bike is tall. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah, pretty based dude right there. Look at that.
Cool.
What a dad. Yeah, he does leatherworking, belts, everything else. Yeah, definitely follow Bat Monkey Customs. Is there anything you guys wanted to throw in there before I?
Satisfied.
All right.
Thanks to the chat. Awesome chat tonight. We had a good amount of people here.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
You guys.
And thank you to Stoic Fitness and to Child of Yah. And we'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.